Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.
And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Machuda.
Welcome, everybody, to Hands-On Apologetics. That was fun. I was on Jesus 911. Jesse let me play at the flashers and the siren as we're on a soap patrol, so that was a lot of fun. All right, welcome to Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into the Catholic Apologetics Dojo, and if you're watching on live stream, in fact, I'll do my shout-outs right now. Welcome, everybody, watching live stream on Facebook and YouTube. You'll notice that the gentleman to my right may look familiar. It is none other than Matthew Arnold. Matthew, welcome to Hands-On Apologetics.
Well, thank you, Gary. Of course, this is it's interesting being on Hands-On Apologetics in the studio where I do my show. Great to have you here.
Well, yeah, that's true. This is your turf. This is this is not the Midwest Command Center.
Right. Here at the world headquarters in beautiful Southern California. That's right.
Palatial world headquarters, I might add. And it was very kind of you to bring Michigan weather here in Southern California.
Yeah, we're going to have the coldest storm of the year. They're saying snow levels going down to 1,500 feet, which in this part of the world is a big old deal.
Yeah. I bet.
So we've got we're going to have to go back to the global cooling idea, I guess.
That's right. Well, as soon as I leave, I guarantee temperatures will rise. It's just the way things are. And anyway, if you want to join the show, give us a call at 888-526-2151. That's 888-526-2151. And you've been on my wish list for quite a while.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, I know many listeners are familiar with you on the program, but can you give maybe just a real quick thumbnail sketch of your journey of faith?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was born into what I would call a tradition of generic Christianity, right? My family, like many families at the time in the early 1960s, they kind of fell away from going to church. So I was brought up without any kind of formal religious instruction or church going. But we had a Christmas tree and Easter eggs, right? But prayer before bedtime, grace before meals. That was pretty much it. I didn't have any formation at all. And so come the 1970s, when I was a teenager, I got involved in a lot of things. So stuff that we call New Age today, or occult, right? Astrology and tarot cards and so on and so forth. And then ultimately I got involved in something, these days it's called channeling. The Bible calls it necromancy, where you're trying to consult ghosts and the spirits of the dead, trying to seek information for them. And it was a weird thing. I didn't go to a medium and say, have a traditional Hollywood seance, which is, in fact, as American as apple pie.
That's true.
Rather, I had a friend who had actually been in a very serious car accident. I was a professional musician at the time, and he was a fellow musician, and he actually got run over by a motorhome. He was riding a motorcycle, and somebody made a left turn as he was going through a green light. So, he won a very large settlement from the guy's insurance company, but didn't really compensate for his injuries, which were pretty horrific. Anyway, when that was all over and the dust cleared, he started a recording studio, and I did a lot of work there for him. And he got involved in self-hypnosis as a means of pain management.
Okay.
And he says he had these out-of-body experiences and whatnot. And he's a former Catholic guy who had, fallen into the same sort of hedonism that I was practicing. And he had a gal that he hired as a secretary or receptionist, and she wanted to quit smoking. And he said, let me try and hypnotize you so that you can quit smoking. And while she was under hypnosis, they had a spontaneous channeling experience. All right. So, in other words, a disembodied, and you can take this cum grano salis. Okay, for those of you listening, take it with a grain of salt. It's my story. I'm stuck with it. But you can come to your own conclusions.
Right.
But the point of the story is that they started having conversations. He started having conversations with his disembodied spirit, And they were telling him that he had a great mission in life and that he was going to be recording this music that was going to help spread this message of harmonic convergence and how, everything is one and the one is God and there's, all organized religions is nonsense and so forth.
Right.
And I guess after a short period, the spirits told them they wanted to talk to me. And so they brought me into their little circle. And again, we didn't share this with anybody because they think you're nuts, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, but and I first thought they were pulling my leg, but then when I came to believe that the experience was genuine, of course, I already believed that these sort of things were possible. Mm-hmm. And here I was all this time reaching out for the great beyond. And now here's the great beyond reaching out for me. Yeah, very flattering. By the way, just note generically in the spiritual life, if something flatters your pride, chances are it's not from God.
That's right.
Okay, just saying. Anyway, I got very much involved in this. And then turning point, I started dating this girl. And you've met her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're married now.
Great girl.
Apparently the spirits decided this, that I shouldn't be dating this Catholic girl because it was going to mess up my destiny. So when I was out of town on the road with my band,
so it gave dating tips then too.
I'm sorry?
It gave you
dating tips. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They were smart enough not to approach me about this. They tried to go around about and get her to break it off.
Yeah.
And she, she was lured to the studio with the promise that my friend would drive her up to the town where we were playing. Mm. This is in the days before cell phones. I didn't want her driving her 67 Mustang, all the way up to Ridgecrest, which is where we were playing, because, if she broke down or something, it would be a girl alone. That's not a good thing. Right. Anyway, and my friend said, hey, we'll surprise Matthew, so, come on over to the studio after work and leave your car here, and then we'll carpool up together. Well, when she got there, he says, hey, come on into their little kitchenette at the studio, is where we, used to sit around the table and consult with the spirit world. Okay. And they, he put our medium into the trance, and the spirit started to talk to Betty about how she needs to break up with me. And she's like, wow, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Let me out of here. And, my friend was very insistent. Oh, come on, just open yourself up. By the way, that's another thing. When people tell you to close your eyes and open your mind, put your hand on your wallet. Okay, just saying. Anyway, long story longer, she starts to pray just interiorly, to the Blessed Virgin. And the spirits went absolutely ballistic, started screaming obscenities and saying that calling our Blessed Mother blasphemous names, saying she can't help you here, and that sort of thing.
Wow.
And my friend, had a heck of a time getting our medium out of the trance, and was, profoundly apologetic, as you might expect, because he was certainly not expecting anything like that. Okay. It was the devil let the Mission Impossible mask slip,
Yeah, so up to that point, they're thinking, this is benevolent.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it had never occurred to me that because I had no religious formation, because I had no objective standard by which to judge, in my own defense, I had no, reason to believe, once I thought it was genuine, that they might not have our best interests at heart, or may even mean us harm.
Yeah, right.
And so I left our little circle, but it's not like I jumped into Catholicism. I didn't want to have anything to do with any kind of religion or any kind of spirituality. And so in my experience, whether I was the victim of an elaborate practical joke and they still haven't yelled surprise, or whether, our medium was, the victim of a multiple personality disorder or something, or whether it was the devil himself, it doesn't really matter. Right. Because the devil's purpose was being accomplished. Right. And so Betty and I got married, and if you want to know why, that's her story, okay? It's like, why would a devout Catholic woman marry a person like this? You're going to have to consult her on that. But we eventually did get married, and I did not come into the church at that time. I was not ready, and the priest, God bless him, knew I wasn't ready. And we went through all of the process you have to go if you're a non-Catholic being married. And I had never been baptized or anything, so I was just a pagan. Okay. And we came into the church, we got married, and I didn't come to the church. And he said, technically you're supposed to take the RCIA program because you're promising to raise your children Catholic. Mm-hmm. And, you can't give what you don't have, right? Right. So he says, when the children come along, when they start having questions, take RCIA then, so that you'll be able to fulfill your obligation. I said, sure thing. Okay. We're married in 1991. 1993, my first son, Macklin, is born. We brought him home from the hospital. Betty says, are you going to take RCIA? And I said, it's not like he's got questions. At that point, he couldn't even hold up his own head,
Yeah, right.
But when he was not even 3 years old. Honestly, he was 2 and a bit. And he asked his mom one Sunday after Mass, because I always went to church with her just out of solidarity, and I'd promised to raise the kids Catholic and all that.
Mm-hmm.
We're at church, and after Mass, he asked his mommy, why does everybody receive communion except me and Daddy?
Oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, well, honey, to receive communion, you have to understand that the host is Jesus. And he thinks about it and goes, well, if that's Jesus, where's his hair? Right? Perfect 2-year-old question.
Absolutely.
And Betty says, go ask your dad. Yeah, you see where this is going. And so I said, well, look, she wanted me to know that he actually had a legit question, and I didn't have an answer. And I said, okay, well, if there was a priest there that I had a great deal of respect for, and he was really like his homilies, he was obviously very sincere. I said, if he was teaching one of those classes, I'd consider it. Yeah. And so Monday morning, she's on the phone to the rectory, and RCIA starts that Thursday, and guess who's teaching it?
It's the priest.
Yeah, that's right. So, I can tell, even in my new agey thing, maybe the stars were aligning against me or something. I understood what was going on. I did insist that my wife attend with me. Mm-hmm. And she immediately goes, whoa, why do I have to go? I had 12 years of Catholic school. And I'm like, well, because, it's Wednesday night and we're going to go have religious instruction. Then you go out to Dairy Queen afterwards and talk about it, because that's a Protestant tradition, you see.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we did. And about 6 weeks in, they got to the apostolic succession, and the penny dropped for me intellectually. As we're almost out of time here. I'm not hearing the music yet, but I know it's coming up. So maybe I'll save this part 2 in the next segment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not hearing it either. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's starting to come up.
Right.
All right, we're here with Matthew Arnold, and we're talking about his background, his journey. We're going to talk a little bit about magic later on, too. So, folks, you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Hands on Apologetics. We'll be right back.
If you're a listener to Virgin Most Powerful Radio, you already know about Hands-on Apologetics with Master Apologist Gary Machuda. And if you're a fan of Hands-on Apologetics, then we have some exciting news for you. This February, Sensei Gary will be leaving the Apologetics Dojo in Michigan to visit the Virgin Most Powerful Radio World Headquarters in Covina, California. And if you'll be in Southern California this February, we have more exciting news for you. Not only will Gary be doing his live show from our Virgin Most Powerful Radio studio, but he will be giving a live presentation on February 20th at 7 p.m. right here at the Sacred Heart Chapel. That's Gary Machuda speaking live on the topic of Breaking the Bible Barrier, Why Catholic Appeals to the Bible Fail, and How to Make Them Successful. For more information, call 877-526-2151 or visit virginmostpowerfulradio.org. It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Hands-on Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody, to Hands-On Apologetics. Yes, the Midwest Command Center has moved temporarily out west to the world headquarters here at Palatial Virgin Most Powerful Radio Studios. And next to me is Matthew Arnold. We were just talking about Matthew Arnold's journey of faith and how he put off RCIA till his son begins to ask questions. And you said that when you came to the top of an apostolic succession, that was really what hit
about
you.
6 weeks in. Like I said, it was the penny dropped for me
Yeah.
intellectually. And it's because I'd had some brushes with evangelical Christianity, friends that had tried to get me saved and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had kind of discounted it because it's like, well, you have to accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. Why? Well, it says so in the Bible. Well, why do you believe the Bible? Because it's the inspired Word of God. Why do you believe it's the inspired Word of God? Because it says so in the Bible.
Right.
I'm 17 years old. I can see the circle.
Yeah.
So I'm going, I got a whole shelf full of books that claim to be, channeled from the mystic masters or whatever. This is just one more on the smorgasbord.
Right.
But when I got around to the apostolic succession, it's no, Christ. The evangelicals are right. Catholicism is not a Bible-based church, right? Catholicism is Christ-based, and the Bible is church-based.
Yes.
And it's like,
Put.
because for many, especially fundamentalist evangelical people, they have a tendency to look at the Scripture like a man looking down a well. Okay, so there's like a long dark tunnel, and your own reflection at the other end.
Yeah.
And that's it. So they sort of project themselves onto the New Testament and ignore everything that happened between then and now.
Yeah.
When I got around to the idea of the apostolic succession, I actually had a mental picture in my mind of a long dark tunnel, really, with St. Peter at one end, and then all these little figures getting closer and closer until it was John Paul II.
Wow.
That image came into my mind. I'm going, of course the Catholic Church knows what the Bible means. They were there. They were there every step of the way, figuring it out, making sure that things, kept on it's like, okay, so, wow. But that's not why I converted. Mm-hmm. Of all of the available world views, Catholicism is the only one that consistently makes sense in every regard. But I don't believe in Catholicism because Catholicism makes sense. Mm-hmm. I believe in Catholicism because I was granted the gift of faith by the Holy Spirit, and that happened through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary and my wife.
That's an important point because so many people try to reduce it down to a system, that if you just buy into the system, then you have faith in that. But it's really a work of God. It's grace.
Absolutely. Well, and you can see that more and more I'm engaging with people who are agnostic or atheist, and I went through that period. When I broke away from my New Agey beliefs, I became practically agnostic. Maybe there's a God we can't really know. There's no way to know anything about him. I was not familiar with any of the. I had product of the public education system. Nobody ever showed me the five proofs for the existence of God from Aquinas or anything like that. Right? I didn't. But that's the thing. When you're speaking with the atheists, we really need to stick to that. Mm-hmm. You got to stick to because you can rationally apprehend. With a human intellect unaided by grace, you can figure out that there has to be a God.
Right.
But belief in Catholicism requires the gift of faith because it's about trust in the revelation.
Right.
And so if you want to argue biblical minutiae, don't do it with an atheist because they're unarmed.
Right.
They don't have the theological virtues.
Right.
And without them, they honestly can't have the conversation.
Right.
All right. Anyway, long story longer. So we're praying the rosary in this class, every class, because the priest is like holy and all that. And he also is somebody who had kind of fallen away from Catholicism in his youth. He'd become an Assemblies of God, Pentecostal door-to-door preacher guy, reverts, feels the call of the priesthood, travels, and studies abroad, graduates summa cum laude from the Gregorian, and is ordained by St. John Paul II.
Wow.
And then comes back to Southern California to teach my RCIA class. Right? Don't tell me that God doesn't work in mysterious ways because he was the perfect storm for me. He's got an answer for everything.
Yeah.
And he's extremely faithful.
Right.
And so it's like, wow, what a beautiful example. And I didn't tell Betty. When I had this conviction, the Holy Spirit came rushing in like a mighty wind. I had a very powerful experience. And
now, were you baptized to this point?
No,
No. Okay.
No. Wow. This is that's that initial grace.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted, and I waited till the next class. And we always shook Father's hand at the end and said, thanks, Father, I'll see you next week. And I said, so what do I have to do to be baptized?
Wow.
And my wife burst into tears because she'd been praying for years if the Holy Spirit would open my heart just a crack.
Right.
And of course, and we were praying that the Blessed Virgin Mary would intercede with the Holy Spirit to do just that.
Right.
And so don't pray like that if you don't expect, if you don't want results, right?
Right. Okay.
I cried.
Don't expect immediate results, though.
No, of course not.
Yeah,
No, that's not the way it works. And it works different for everybody too.
Yeah. But there's always a result, though.
And there's that whole free will thing that kind of gets in the way too. But it was really amazing. She started crying. I started crying, and I said to the priest, "I want to thank you." And he said, "It's not me; it's the Holy Spirit." And that really struck me. Not only, because coming to the idea that there is a personal God is one thing. Mm-hmm. Coming to the realization that personal God actually cares about me, that's life-changing,
Right.
And of course, and at this point, I was well and truly entrenched in the entertainment business. After I left the circle, I also left the music business, and became a professional magician, like you do. Yeah. Okay, so that's something I ever since I was a boy, it was a hobby.
Right.
And for me as an entertainer, I was really just switching mediums. I wanted media, I should say. Okay. I wanted out of the music business because of all of its bad associations for me with the new age stuff. Right. And magic is something that I like. It's just entertainment. It's just a different way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I'm something of a voracious student, and I joined the Magic Castle, auditioned for them. There is one accredited college of magic in the United States of America, and I am a graduate. Wow. The Chavez College of Manual Dexterity and Prestidigitation. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. So do you have a diploma with
I do.
Invisible ink, I think?
No, but it gets old and I stay young. So there's
okay.
I wish that was the truth. Anyway, yeah. So the interesting thing is that I was looking, and a lot of people I think associate stage magic with the occult, and maybe we can talk about that later.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're really, the connection is superficial at best. And in fact, I had turned to magic partially to bolster my agnosticism, because magicians know that it's all a trick. Yeah. Harry Houdini back in the 1920s, when spiritualism was a big thing, and all the seances and all this stuff. And you can imagine after World War II, mechanized warfare, so many millions of boys dying far away from home and all that, no last words, no, no closure. And the idea that you could have a religion that didn't require any faith, that you could talk directly to the departed and know that they were okay and blah, blah, blah. It must have been very attractive. Sure. But it was also a wonderful opportunity for charlatanism. Yes. Because anybody can close their eyes and put on a phony voice and pretend to be.
And that was Houdini. Houdini wanted to debunk charlatans.
He was instrumental testifying before Congress to make spiritualism, fortune telling, it's illegal. It's fraud. Right. People still do it, but you'll notice that if you go into the National Enquirer or whatever and find the psychic hotline numbers, underneath in small print, it'll say for entertainment purposes only. Yes. And that's put there for legal reasons.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you can't really, it's not really legal to claim that you have a direct conduit to the great beyond and you can tell people, what's going to happen, what their lottery number is going to be. Although you would think people would figure that out pretty quickly just by experimentation, right? Yeah.
You don't see a lot of millionaires walking out of
that's right.
fortune tellers.
That's right.
Yeah, I always thought, well, maybe I shouldn't bring this up because it's kind of malicious, but go into one of those places and talk to a psychic and say, I planted a bomb on the premise. Now you tell me that we're in the premises.
Right. You got 10 minutes to figure it out.
To prove you're authentic.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be bad.
That would be pretty cold-blooded.
Yeah.
But it would definitely separate the men from the boys. But I will say one thing, and this is something because, and I don't know if we have time enough to do it now or not, but I did a very short, I wanted to be the new Houdini. I wanted to debunk that stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Turns out there's not a lot of money in debunking. Okay. Because
that's true.
And largely, same thing with apologetics. People don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Right.
I have my own prejudices and I'm comfortable with them. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. But I had a knowledge of things like tarot cards and astrology and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I also had now a whole arsenal of techniques of deception.
Right.
And those two things fit together quite nicely if you want to, say, be a psychic reader.
Right.
And I did that for a while. I was engaged at a European-themed restaurant, and they would have psychic fairs. And I was the guy with the turtleneck. And this was 100 pounds ago, by the way. Okay. When I was in my early 30s and 185 pounds, I cut a very dashing figure, let me say, with my black turtleneck and my tarot cards, right?
Right.
And people would come in and get a carafe of wine and some appetizers and a free tarot card reading. Free, meaning that they would kick me back $15 a head on the people who came in.
Right.
And the thing is, I had learned that you can, people will accept a set of generalized statements as specific to themselves if you can give them a reason, whether it's the bumps on your head or the lines on your hand or the tarot cards or whatever.
Yeah.
And I largely gave people the same reading over and over again, but everybody understands it differently because they're making these connections. Say a bunch of general things, it's only going to stick if they can actually apply it to something in their own life. And then if they communicate that to you and you tell it back to them, then they go away going, man, that guy's got the gift. But here's the thing. There's an awful lot of people out there who read a book on how to read the tarot cards, legitimately so-called, and it has all this conflicting information. It can mean this or it can mean the opposite of that. It can mean this or it can mean the opposite of that. It can mean this, it can mean the opposite.
Okay.
They sit down at the kitchen table with somebody, a friend or a relative or whatever, and they lay out the cards and they say this stuff and they're all, oh, you know what, that's like when Uncle Jim broke his ankle, and that's like when such and such a thing happened.
Sure.
And the person goes, wow, this really works. And the person who's reading the card thinks, golly gee, I do have the gift. And we call them shut-eye psychics.
Okay.
Right, in the profession of people who are psychic entertainers who know that it's not real. And as a result, you have people, like if you go in there and you say, I planted a bomb, who think they have real psychic powers and are going to find out in a quick hurry, that they maybe they don't. And they're using what we call cold reading almost intuitively. Something just happens. And,
what is
and they're going for the agreement, getting people to say yes, almost like a sales technique.
So they're looking for tells in your expression, things like that.
Absolutely. You can see when you're hitting when something strikes.
Right.
Especially when people are very intensely concentrating. In research, it's called the Barnum factor or the Barnum principle, right? As in there's a sucker born every minute.
Okay.
Its real name is confirmation bias. If you have an a priori idea, you will tend to judge things that way, right?
Yeah.
They have research students run rats through a maze, and they say the white ones are smarter than the brown ones, and they score the white ones higher, even though rats are rats.
Yeah, very good. Well, on the other side of the break, let's talk about that and applying it to apologetics.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're talking with Matthew Arnold, everybody. Listen to Hands on Apologetics. The dojo is out west, and I can't say it's warmer, but it certainly is more warm in terms of hospitality. So stay tuned, everybody.
This is Terry Barber inviting you, all the men, to a men's conference June 15th at the Sacred Heart Chapel. This is going to be a day where we're going to talk about true masculinity. There's a problem in the Catholic Church today. We have very few men who love the Catholic faith. And I know a lot of the wives that I'm listening to right now saying, I want my husband to be on fire for the faith. Send him to the men's conference. Your son, send him to the men's conference by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call 877-526-2151. That's June 15th. When your husband comes back from this conference or your son, they're going to have a different view about their Catholic faith because they're going to meet three men who love Jesus and his bride, the church, and are going to instill in them a love for Christ and his church, the Eucharist, Our Lady. Bring them to virginmostpowerfulradio.org. Sign up there or call 877-526-2151. Full sheen ahead.
It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Yes, we're in studio with Matthew Arnold, and Matthew was just talking about his delving into magic, academically and in practice. And we were talking about cold reading, about people want to believe something. They have a conclusion at the outset, and then they'll fit the evidence to square with their conclusion.
That's right. And I can give you a, I mentioned that they call it the Barnum factor. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it at work. And I can tell you a story. I was at the restaurant once upon a time, and a table full of men came in. And that was extremely unusual. Lots of women come for their tarot readings, sometimes couples. Usually the guys, they're doing it as a lark. Mm-hmm. But almost, I want to say outside of that, almost exclusively female. Okay. And then one day I get a table full of men. And I'm like, well, that's different. And so I'm sitting over there in the corner, and they send over the first guy. And do you remember brawny paper towels?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they used to have a commercial with a guy, a lumberjack, right? That was their symbol to show you how tough their paper towels were.
Yeah, right.
That's who comes over to the table. It's the brawny paper towel guy, He's 6'4" and wearing a flannel shirt and a beard and just oozing testosterone. And I'm going, oh boy. And he's almost visibly hostile.
Oh, okay.
And he sits down, and I'm trying to engage him in conversation. He's just grunting at me, one monosyllabic, and all the negative body language you can imagine, his arms crossed and so forth. So I give him a tarot card reading, and I'm burying this guy in conflicting information. Okay. At the same time that I'm trying to read his poker face, and he's given me nothing. And my mind is racing. I'm thinking, okay, these guys have come to expose me as a fraud, and I am a fraud. So, maybe we can get this guy his money back, get him out without making a fuss. This is all going through my head as I'm right. And I kind of cut things short, and we'll say his name was Bob. And I say, okay, Bob, the only thing I had gotten out of him is that he'd never have a tarot card reading before. Mm-hmm. I say, okay, Bob, that was it. What do you think of your first tarot card reading? And he looks at me and he goes, that was so scary. Honestly, those guys were right. Everything you said was true. And I'm, not only am I breathing a sigh of relief, but I'm thinking to myself, if I had known, I probably would have given him a very different, tarot card reading. But the point is that he did all my justification for me.
Right.
Without any of the artifice or subterfuge that I had become adept at. Right. He was hook, line, and sinker, and he came over there a skeptic, and he left a believer. Yeah. But only because he really wanted to be one all along.
You're right. And we do the same thing with evidence. When you're looking into something, that you have a preconceived idea how things are, and then you kind of it's not the evidence driving your conclusion, it's the conclusion driving the evidence. Right. For example, with the mythicist, people who think that Christianity is nothing other than just pagan cult myths that were revamped into this, modern Christian thing, and they'll compare the two, and of course they'll pick out similarities, even though they're even very slight superficial similarities, and absolutize them. This is a definite link that Christianity came from this group, and they ignore all the counter evidence about the things that are completely different.
Yeah, and germane to this conversation, the one thing that is I think a shining example is the stories behind the practices of Halloween, because most of that is from 19th century Protestant polemics, got nothing to do with actual history.
Okay.
Halloween.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
true.
no celebration of Halloween in Ireland, for example, and yet it came to the United States with the Irish, right? It was another way to pick on Catholics and claim that they were doing a bunch of superstitious things and whatnot. But I mean, the reason that they did that All Saints' Day was in the 1st of November is because the pilgrims would descend upon Rome, and they had to have it after the harvest so there'd be enough food for everybody. Right. Got nothing to do with pagan dating or anything like, because originally it was celebrated in the springtime. Which, by the way, is when all the pagan celebrations of the dead are. The idea of death as a harvest of souls is a completely Christian idea. That's not pagan at all. The idea that there's going to be this harvest and, that he's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's from Jesus, folks. Yeah. Okay,
A bit older.
but if you want to make Jesus into a corn god, you're going to find a way.
Right, yeah. And of course, not only is that true where like cold reading or just giving general conflicting answers, but you can also deceive people by restricting the evidence that they're allowed to see so that it appears like something that it otherwise isn't. I could see you nodding.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Where's the tie-in with magic?
Well, pardon me. Well, first off, I think we had a conversation the other day where I was talking about misdirection, and that's a term that people apply to sleight of hand. Right. The idea that, I'm going to make you look over here while I do something sneaky over here. Right. And that's not really misdirection. It's more, it's actually direction. If I can, convince you that there's something important to look at, larger movement covers the smaller movement, that kind of thing. But, you're not going to fool anybody if you like, look, what's over there, and do something while they turn away, right? It has to be a lot more subtle than that.
Right. Is that a bird?
Yeah. And as a result, there's a whole kind of sophisticated nonverbal language that's involved in doing things that seem significant that aren't, and that kind of thing. And you just find magicians tell jokes and so forth. A lot of that is and they'll relax, and there's an offbeat. And that's where the dastardly thing happens when you're not expecting it.
Yeah, right.
And oftentimes long before you would know that anything significant was meant to happen, right? So it's timing and so forth. But then when you get around to, say, YouTube, you're now in a two-dimensional environment that is under the complete control of whoever's behind the camera. You can literally only see what they want you to see.
Yes.
You know? And so suddenly miracles are possible. You could never, because a lot of times with magic, especially sleight of hand magic, which was my forte, if someone is, seated across you from the table, it's a miracle. If they're looking over your shoulder, it's an education. Okay? Right. So all of those factors have to be taken into account. And again, like when you get to YouTube, and it's unfortunate. Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit and come back to this, I promise.
Okay. No, this is fascinating stuff.
In the 19th century, well, let's go back to the 16th century. 1585, Sir Reginald Scott wrote a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft. Discovery in the old sense of expose. He was fighting against the witch craze, which had swarmed, Protestant Europe. I think over 100 years, something close to 30,000 people were hung for witchcraft, most of whom were completely innocent. And so he wrote this entire tome saying, look, there are these different things. These people are not actually having concourse with the devil. The reason it's significant to me, the reason I have a facsimile edition of it in my own library, is because it was the first book in the English language to expose how magic tricks work.
Oh,
and really? He even has an apology in there to such poor fellows as make their living thereby, because he knew that it was going to undermine their work if he exposed how their tricks work.
Sure.
But he was saving lives.
Yeah,
right? Now, you come to the 19th century, and you have the great American magicians like Harry Keller and Howard Thurston, and Houdini actually was the most famous of all, but he was really an escape artist. He didn't do a magic show. He got out of predicaments. But these other fellows who did the big, grand, full evening magic shows, in their advertising posters, a lot of times they'd have pictures of like little red imps, little devils, little cartoon devils with the horns and the pointy tails whispering into their ear or pointing something out, as though to suggest that they were doing these things with diabolical assistance. Yeah. But it was a joke, and it was intended to be, because there was a time, I suppose, when people could do sleight of hand magic and claim that it was that they were getting help from the spirit world or whatever.
Right.
But by the 19th century, those days were gone. This is the time we have steam automobiles now. People don't believe in that stuff anymore, and so it was whimsical for them to do that, to make that suggestion, because there has to be some kind of suggestion, because you don't want to say, "Hey, come see me fool you with a bunch of trick boxes."
Right.
It's no fun, right? So, but that we've come to a point, though, unfortunately, and I'm real quick, back in the Middle Ages, magicians that we think, they weren't called magicians, they were called jugglers.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Yeah,
a
that's true.
guy who did magic.
Well, even
tricks.
before that, I mean, the Egyptians were known as like jugglers, but magicians.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, magic and conjuring that's one thing, but the sleight of hand magic it was understood as entertainment. It was only when when Protestantism comes along and they become ideological about the supernatural, and they strip the supernatural out of their religion. Boy, people are going to find it. Yeah. If you say there's no sacraments,
right,
then but there's witches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the reasons that came along, because it didn't happen there wasn't any witch craze in the Catholic countries.
That's true. Absolutely.
So anyway, long story longer on this. I apologize for waxing eloquent here, but
no, that's very profound, because in a sense, it's kind of part of the secularization. Once a Protestant a country becomes Protestant, it began to desacralize. They didn't celebrate feast and all that stuff. And there was also a movement within Protestantism against miracles.
Right.
That because the Catholic Church, miracles happen.
Right, yeah, sure, right, yeah.
So it was. So maybe that's it. So would you see it as like a transference of the need for miracles, but
that's
that can't
precisely
be
the
now,
point.
so it has to be something else.
That's right. That's right, because people hunger for the supernatural.
Yeah.
That's why, Chesterton said, when you stop believing the truth, you don't believe in nothing, you're liable to believe anything.
Right.
And it is. I say faith and reason go together. I mean, that's the whole, that's the basis of Catholicism, is faith and reason. And if you lose your faith, you lose your mind.
Yes.
And that's why we now live in an era in the 21st century when I've got a computer in my pocket that is more powerful than the entire UNIVAC corporation that put the man on the moon. And people think Chris Angel does real magic, okay? and it's a sign of the times. There are, and you even see websites, and even some of our sedevacantist, the Diamond Brothers, they put up these YouTube videos from magicians, right, in that 2D environment, who are doing these and saying this is proof of demonic activity,
right,
which is absolute nonsense. Yeah. So important that we keep our heads.
Yes, absolutely. Well, hey, we're talking with Matthew Arnold, Hands-On Apologetics, and kind of showing how some of the tricks, I guess you could just say, the deceptions of magic, also has parallels in apologetics, because that's when we defend the faith, we want to dispel deception. Stay tuned.
If you're a listener to Virgin Most Powerful Radio, you already know about Hands-On Apologetics with Master Apologist Gary Machuda. And if you're a fan of Hands-On Apologetics, then we have some exciting news for you. This February, Sensei Gary will be leaving the Apologetics Dojo in Michigan to visit the Virgin Most Powerful Radio World Headquarters in Covina, California. And if you'll be in Southern California this February, we have more exciting news for you. Not only will Gary be doing his live show from our Virgin Most Powerful Radio studio, but he will be giving a live presentation on February 20th at 7 p.m. right here at the Sacred Heart Chapel. That's Gary Machuda speaking live on the topic of Breaking the Bible Barrier, Why Catholic Appeals to the Bible Fail, and How to Make Them Successful. For more information, call 877-526-2151 or visit virginmostpowerfulradio.org. It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. I am flanked by Master Apologist and also Master Magician, I guess you could say, Matthew Arnold. And I tell you, he's working some magic on this program. This is a fun program. Before we begin, let me thank everybody for their hospitality and bringing me here, because we're going to have best of shows Thursday and Friday. Tonight, 7 o'clock at the historic Sacred Heart Chapel. Yours truly is going to be there. I'm going to give my talk on busting the Bible barrier. I have my CDs, my books, and I'm giving away a free book too. So it'd be great to see everybody if you can make it. And 7 o'clock, no admittance fees, nothing like that. It's just penance, I say.
Yeah.
If
No,
anything.
I think that's wonderful. Back in the days when I was a musician, we toyed with the idea of naming the band Free Beer, because if you put that on the marquee, but you could put up free books, right?
Right. Yeah, there we go. Maybe that should be the title of the talk, free books. So we're talking magic and apologetics and, magicians, also angles too, that the audience is situated in such a way that they don't see the whole deal, just the parts that you want to see.
That's right.
And in apologetics, sometimes it's focusing on certain parts of evidence and then just ignoring everything else creates a false illusion, like with cults, for example, or groups that use mind control. Right. They only accept organizational information. Nothing outside of that is allowed. And so, you wonder, why do these people believe this stuff? And it's because that is the only information that really they see.
Well, think about social media now. Mm-hmm. When I put up a Facebook page a number of years ago, because it became, a thing that you had to do if you were going to be in business. You had to have a Facebook page, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I did that, and I've got hundreds of friends, and I have no idea who these people are.
Same here.
And it used to be that you would go on your Facebook thing and you would see whatever the latest post was of people who were your friends. Mm-hmm. You would see their posts. And now Facebook is using computer algorithms to decide what it is you're going to see based on your behavior and apparently what they want you to see.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is a technique of deception.
Right.
And it's a danger that they're fragmenting people into these echo chambers.
Yeah.
And Betty the other day, she got a thing and there was a picture and it's blacked out. And there was a little missive that says, you're not seeing this because the content could be graphic or disturbing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she clicked on it was kids saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
And so it's like, okay, what's that about?
Sure.
And so they've got these, who knows what criteria they're using to decide if something is, not shouldn't be seen by you.
Right.
And is that criteria personal to you or particular to you, or is it particular to them that there are things that they just don't want people to see generally or whatever?
Right.
And it's interesting because the internet was kind of the Wild West there for a few years.
Yeah.
And now it's Big Brother again.
Yeah. It's kind of we've been balkanized into our own little spheres of information, little I always think of cones of silence. You remember Get Smart, where it's like, well, in that case, they couldn't even talk to each other, but,
Right, yeah.
but you're kind of segmented from the rest of society. Yeah.
Right.
And the cool thing about Catholicism is that Catholics are the exact opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I don't know how many times a potential convert comes into my parish, and the first thing Catholics want to say is, "Oh, you're going to be a convert? What about the Inquisition? What about all the bad stuff?" Where if you went to a group that is more of a coercive group, it's like only the positive stuff. There's
Right.
boundaries, and you can't go through there. That's strength for the organization.
And you can see the lingering effects. And this is something that we all have to deal with, the maybe attachments to things in your former life or whatever. But, I remember talking with some folks that were deeply into, I think the Jehovah's Witness group. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about, the Templars being an occult secret society, which is not at all true. Mm-hmm. And they said, but the founder of JW's was a Mason, and so he knows. Right, and so the history books are wrong because he knows the real secret information. And these are people that have converted to Catholicism, that are still trapped in this thought bubble that was created for them by a person who they know created a false religion, right? But is somehow more trustworthy because, the history books just print what the historians want you to know, but the secret societies, and it's difficult to get past that because it's not rational. At that point. And that's becoming the thing that's the greater challenge to me, is that we're raising up a generation of people who don't or won't think rationally.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And that's a real danger, right? Yeah. That's why the faith and reason, man. You gotta keep, and the difference between faith and gullibility too. I mean, that's a really super important distinction to make, because you can. Rationally apprehend the existence of God through the use of reason. Right. But you do have to have faith for, the revelation to be able to accept that. But it's not, when somebody says, you just believe things by faith, you believe things you can't prove. It's like, yeah, I do believe things I can't prove, but I believe them for good reasons. Mm-hmm. But if I believe that somebody can tell my future because of the bumps on my head, I'm believing something for a bad reason. Or a poor reason, right?
Sure.
And you have to, and that's the difference. You have to be able to make that distinction,
right,
between having faith in something that's trustworthy and being, gullible and believing in something that's nonsense.
Right. Yeah, we got to be critical on both ends.
Right.
We have to be critical for something and also critical of arguments against things.
And God can stand up to it. Don't be scared.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. What do you got to lose? But
Catholicism has nothing to fear from science.
Well, hey, we only have a couple more minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about your book.
Sure.
And actually, I'm going to have you back in the dojo. We'll have you
I'd
via
love
phone, and we could do a whole thing on your book.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
But tell us a little bit about it, and
okay,
give us a little bit of a tease.
Well, I for years I went out and gave my conversion story, and I come into the Catholic Church with the sacramental grand slam of baptism, confirmation, and First Holy Communion, and then I would tell people how when I got to St. Joe's, they wanted me to do a whole series, a whole tape series, a lecture set on the New Age. It's like I'm not an expert in everything, so I had to do some research, and I spoke with Pat Devlin, who I believe is past, God rest her soul, who at the time was the information officer for the Covenant of the Goddess, which was a Wiccan witchcraft network, right?
Wow.
It's like, they got a website and everything, right? And so
it must be legit then.
Well, I knew her actually from my Hollywood days as a consultant. I did consulting for movies and TV as a magician, and she did as a witch. Right,
Really?
They would go to her to get the authentic bona fides, right?
That's what we want in our movies.
But I said, do witches believe the same things that New Agers do? And she says, oh, no, witches are not New Agers at all. And I said, well, then do you have concourse with the devil? And she says, no, we don't even believe in God or the devil, right? Okay. And I'm like, that's interesting. Okay, so witches aren't New Agers. And then I spoke, and then they're not Satanists either, apparently. So I spoke to a representative of the Church of Satan who said that Satanists are atheists.
Yep.
Right,
like Dante LaVey.
Right, the actual Church of Satan. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, New Agers aren't witches, and witches aren't Satanists, and apparently even Satanists aren't Satanists, right? But when you scratch the surface, it turns out that they all believe that they are, in fact, the highest authority. that it's all about me. Like Shirley MacLaine in her New Age book from the 80s, Out on a Limb, said, you are God, and you mustn't worship anything or anyone other than yourself.
Yep.
And so I used to go around and tell people, don't fall for what is literally the oldest trick in the book, right? That's what Satan said.
Sure. Yeah, right. Right back to Garden
So
Eden.
actually, all these people aren't Satanists, but it's the satanic doctrine that they're preaching.
Right. Sure.
But that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of my story. And I, I got involved in Catholic apologetics, which is great. I mean, the oil wasn't dry on my forehead, and I was doing a radio show with Scott Hahn.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I don't think I was prepared for the antagonism between Catholicism on paper and Catholicism as it was being practiced at the local parish.
Yeah.
And I got involved in Catholic traditionalism to the point that I actually, for a while, was worshiping at a chapel that was outside the diocesan structure.
Okay.
Now, Benedict XVI came along, solved that for me. Left a skid mark on my way back into the institutional church.
Right.
And again, with the help of the Blessed Virgin, and that's part of the story, and we don't really have time for all of that now.
Yeah.
But it is recounted, and I wanted to let people know that traditional Catholics, by and large, are just nice, well-meaning people that want to worship the way that their parents and grandparents and patron saints worshipped,
Right.
and that I am among them.
Yeah.
But also sound a note of caution against taking this stance of continual opposition to the church, because that's not a good place to be spiritually, and you have to find that medium. That traditional Catholics are called upon to pray for those who persecute you, and do all this heroic stuff, and at the end say I'm an unprofitable servant because I just did what I was obliged to do.
Right.
There's two expressions of the Roman rite, but there's only one church, and we're all in it together.
Right. Yeah. And so the name of the book is
Confessions of a Traditional Catholic.
Right, and it's published by
Ignatius Press.
a great publisher.
Yeah, and you can get it, just anywhere, right? Amazon or Ignatius.com or even my website. So,
Yeah, and that's another thing where it's sometimes we absolutize things and
Right.
ignore other things, and
Yeah.
some before you know it, you're outside the fold.
that's right. You start by saying, I want to be really Catholic, and that's the most important thing, and suddenly you're singing, Here I Stand Without One Plea.
Yeah, that's funny how things happen like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, yep.
And I highly recommend the book. And boy, I mean, I can't believe time has flown. I mean,
It really
we're down to
has
the
been
last
a quick
couple
hour.
minutes.
Yeah.
So you're
I do
definitely
like the sound of my own voice. That was probably part of it.
Yeah, that's another thing. I got to talk to Richard because I think there's a difference in microphones, because I thought I had a booming voice until I heard you speak. Now I sound like this little wimpy.
Oh, no, I don't think that's the case at all. And I want to say too, just I don't want to be maudlin, but it has been such a pleasure to meet you and your lovely wife, and to be able to interact with you a little bit socially as well as the apostolate here. It's really terrific. You're one of the good ones. I'm with Jesse. You've been 4 horsemen of apologetics.
Well, yeah. I have a different configuration of the 4 horsemen, but
Yeah.
of course, that's not always a good sign. 4 horsemen. Yeah, just keep that in mind too. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the final broadcast out here in the palatial Virgin Most Powerful Studios. Thank you so much for listening. It's been great to come out to California again tonight at Sacred Heart Chapel, 7:00 p.m. If you want to meet me in person, see how tall I am. You can take photos. We will do that. And I might actually teach you a little bit about Scripture and how to share your faith. And coming up next, we have the dynamic duo of Catholic Talk Radio, the Terry and Jesse Show. And Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the show.
A great pleasure. Great to be here. God bless you.
Oh, thank you. God bless you too. Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless.
In the 1990s, I lived and worked in Hollywood. But when my wife Betty's mom took ill, we relocated to Orange County. And it was during this time in our lives that I converted to Catholicism. Once my eyes were opened to the truth, I couldn't learn enough about the faith. But I had less free time than ever, especially with a long commute. That's when I discovered the real value of Catholic audio. Listening to cassette tapes transformed my daily commute into a miniature retreat. And that's the beauty of Virgin Most Powerful Radio today. Since the podcasts are archived, you can listen anytime on our smartphone app. I know how listening to Catholic audio can bring you closer to Christ and His Church. So I encourage you to visit the App Store or go to vmpr.org and download the app today. It just might change your life. I'm Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio.